Good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome back to the DB show. Right. So, big update today. There's a lot of shit to get into today. Obviously, yesterday's game against Fiorentina, transfers, and obviously all the latest news we got to get through to. Now, I'm going to start off with pretty much yesterday's game. A little bit of a catch-up match reaction type of thing. So, obviously, there was a comment today. I'm not drawing the person out whatsoever. I'm not like that. But I just wanted to give my thoughts and let you guys know what I actually thought about the game yesterday, because I don't think people kind of understood what I meant. So, look, QPR won 3-2 yesterday against Fiorentina. Fiorentina are a very big side, very European big side in Italy. Now, obviously, I did state this before I went into anything. Pre-season is not really a big thing for clubs, obviously, because it's pretty much basically just seeing what the new guys are like, seeing what the youngsters do in the playing style, and just seeing what's best for the team for the new season. So, look, what I was going on about yesterday after the game started was literally this. Look, we look good. We did look good, and you can see a bit of an identity with what there was yesterday. I'm not saying this is the way we're going to be playing during the whole season and stuff like that, but like he stated in the interview afterwards, he was trying things out. Now, personally, I thought we did okay, and I thought Fiorentina did okay as well. We were all over them, but at the end of the day, look, both teams didn't put any effort in, like, to win the game, for example. We did have our chances. We was obviously getting into the box, and the way we looked was pretty impressive. I liked the way we played. I've been saying about this playing style that we should be playing for a while. Julian has played the style of football before. I believe it was at Strasbourg, if I'm not mistaken. And what I meant by yesterday and why I was very impressed with it yesterday, and I know a lot of people were saying that it wasn't that impressive, I was more impressed with the plan and the team on how they were structured and the plan that was going ahead in the way of playing style. So we saw obviously Burrell and Paul Smith on the wings yesterday. Up front, we saw Kone. And in midfield, we saw Chair, Harvey Vale, and obviously Madsen. And then in the defence-wise, we saw Boy Kemper, we saw Amadou and Bengi on the right, and obviously Ronnie, and obviously we got Jimmy Dunn in the middle, with Charles in goal. So, let's start from what I was seeing on my TV, with what I was seeing with my own eyes. A lot of people ain't going to see what I see in the sense of, you're all going to have your different opinions. I'm not saying mine's a fact. I'm just saying it's my opinion with what I've seen as a person that's played football and obviously going from there. So, personally, I would sit here and say that we looked a lot better when we attacked because we weren't. You can see, all right, we'll start from the back, actually. So, Charles and Ward, I feel like I can see why we've brought these players in now. The way they play and the way Joe Walsh played and the way Nardi played and obviously Ben Hare played last season was a bit different, and I know tactically it might have been different in preseason to what we saw obviously last season, but we saw Charles comfortably pretty much control and be confident to come out of that box on the attacks and push in between the halfway line and the goal, and then we obviously saw our two centre-backs in Jimmy and obviously Ronnie pushing more higher in the attack for a high line for making sure we get more players up there. And we obviously saw Amadou and obviously Boy Kemper running up and down those wings and either cutting in as well. Mainly Boy Kemper cutting in, I would say, on the left. But personally, I would say that's why I kind of enjoyed watching it yesterday and what I was going on about. Because for me, I like to see that type of playing style. It reminds me of Pep. It reminds me of some other styles in head coaches. But I'm not saying it's fully amazing. I'm just saying it's a good statement and it's a good understanding of where what we can do and where we are looking to go to. You know, I know it's just trials at the end of the day, but to see Burrell on the right, phenomenal job in my opinion. You know, on the left, Paul Smith as always was okay. But the middle and the thing is, for me in the middle, the three in midfield with Ilias Share playing a different role, Harvey Vale and Madsen, it looked pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie, it looked really good in the control wise of getting the ball around down the wings. The passing was a lot better. I really enjoyed it. We weren't giving away the ball away so much. You know, it was very controlled passing. And then obviously Charles, I know there were some deliveries that weren't great, and I know that, but Charles does look really much better than what we've had in the past in passing and clearance wise and confidence in the box. You know, he had a good save, but unfortunately things do happen in mistake wise, and like I said last season as well, and I will blame him, Charles, and I will blame the defense as well on that from yesterday. You know, you either gotta be getting up quicker, or you gotta be more controlled in when you save them shots. You know, they gotta literally get cleared a lot more out of the way. But that was the first half. You know, we had a good controlled first half, I thought, on the attack. You know, they had a very impressive team with De Gea in goal and some others on there. Atta, very impressive for Fiorentina. Apparently, they just signed him this season. Good price tag, apparently, for a very experienced player. And I just thought our attack was really a lot better. You know, we looked sharp, and you know, Boy Kemper looked really good at times. You know, even Varane looked good at times, to be honest. But I'll talk about Varane a bit more, obviously, when we talk about the second half. But yeah, you know, the only thing I would say is Kone. You know, obviously we didn't see much of him, but still a lot more effort needs to go in there, I would say. But far from that, I would say we saw Burrell pretty decent yesterday on that right wing on the attack. Paul Smith as well. And just pushing up a lot more higher into the box to get more players in there to score goals. And it did happen. We scored 2 goals, obviously a penalty. And obviously we did score a nice goal from Boy Kemper. But before obviously the second goal, Richard Kone went down with an injury. I don't know what the terms of the injury is at the moment. Obviously we've seen him go down pretty much every game of pre-season so far, in Austria and obviously in Wickham. And I don't know if it's serious yet. I don't know what's going on. They haven't announced anything. They're going to be assessing him for the next 24 to 48 hours, Julian said after the game. Hopefully it's not so serious. But it's a bit of a worry with a striker like that, obviously injured before the season, you know. Now, obviously, that happened and we brought on Alfie Lloyd. And then, obviously, Madsen went down and got taken off the same type of way as what Kone did. And unfortunately, there's still the same news on that 24 to 48 hours to check on him, see what happens. But he's saying that Madsen probably wasn't a big, really serious thing because it was just apparently just got stepped on. So hopefully it's not serious for Madsen. But we also saw Varane come on. And now with these 2 players that come on and changed, obviously the atmosphere in the game, I would say, the mentality, Varane did alright. I think we saw a bit of a different playing style for Varane, where he's usually more defensively, where we saw more of him pushing up in the attack into the box of the opponent, and I thought that was pretty impressive. You know, I have started thinking about this last season with Varane as well. You know, I feel like he's not a defensive midfielder. I just feel like he's more of either a box-to-box or a deep-lying playmaker. I know it sounds a bit weird, but to me, he does seem pretty decent yesterday. I'm not saying it was the best game we saw of his, but it was a big performance for him because obviously last season was really bad for him. You know, when he started QPR, when he came in with Marty, you know, he had a couple of bad appearances at the start. But after his red card against Blackburn, he looked a lot more impressive. And that's the Varane I want to see again after that. You know, someone that's more confident and controlling. You know, the thing that I would say last season is he looked okay at the start. But then when he got his big injury and came back, he didn't look very impressive. You know, the passing, the confidence and all of that was shot out the window. But I'm a big fan of Varane and I'm hoping to see a bit more of what we saw yesterday for Varane. You know, I'm not saying he was the best, but it was a good run out for him yesterday. Such as, like you said, Bojuri, Poku had an excellent game yesterday. I thought it was fantastic. Poku actually performed really well. You know, we saw him getting past players in confidence, getting down on the right and cutting in on the inside. We didn't see that many shots from him, but he looked very impressive and very good, and he didn't go down and he didn't have any injury concerns, you know, and that is a positive for us. But I think Poku is a big thing for us next season. I'm hoping next season we get to use him a bit more, apart from the injury wise. But very impressive start for Poku at Loftus Road yesterday to show the fans. Alfie Lloyd as well, pretty good. You know, got an assist for Paul Smith. Really well played. You know, I wouldn't say it was the best performance for Alfie Lloyd, but for him to be used, personally, you know, I'm going to sit here and say I would prefer Collie and prefer to see Collie on the field. But the fact is, Collie was at the ground. So that's a positive sign for me. You know, I know there was a bit question yesterday, why ain't Collie on the bench? There must be a bit of concern with Collie. Hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully it's nothing to do with transfer wise. Hopefully it's something to do with he's got a knock or something like that. But hopefully we get to see him next season, because Collie is a big part of this team. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's brilliant, and he's a very clinical finisher for QPR. You know, he scored some incredible goals, and he's a very good athlete. So yeah, Collie, hopefully he's all the best. But yeah, going on to Alfie Lloyd, really okay. Wasn't the best performance, but you know, he's a player that we could keep. You know, he can play versatile, where he can play right, left, and down the middle. So very interesting to see him still at QPR. Obviously, we saw who else came on. You know, a big change. Daniel Benny played down the middle. We also saw, I believe, Isak playing in a more attacking role yesterday. You know, we saw some pretty impressive performances, in my opinion. You know, Boy Kemp, obviously, for me, was man of the match, for sure. I know he came off, but he really showed some impressive styles of play, better than what we have seen in our left-backs in recent seasons. You know, the last person I would say at left-back that was really okay was Kenneth Powell. You know, I like Davis, but he just couldn't do it for us. I'll be honest, he just couldn't do it for us. There was nothing exciting there. He had a good performance on his debut, but that was about it. So yeah, but listen, look, we beat Fiorentina 3-2 yesterday. Absolutely great to see a good result, that we win, you know. But let's be honest here, it's just pre-season. Let's not get too hasty into it. Let's not get hating on Twitter and stuff like that. I know a lot of people on Twitter have come out and said certain things, but listen, preseason is just there to show us and warm up and get the lads ready. You know, the big test is 2 weeks away. Millwall and the Carabao Cup. We got this. You know, I feel like when we talk about these transfers in a bit, we obviously will get into that, but I feel like there is depth that we need to strengthen on, and I agree on that. But the team that we have, we need to focus on right now. You know, we can't just keep saying this player's shit and get rid of him or whatever and go from there. But positive signs yesterday. I'll say positive signs. So I'm very happy with yesterday's result. Happy with the game plan. Happy to see a good idea. And hopefully all the best for Julian. And see where it goes, obviously, because we're going to be live on Friday, Saturday night as well. You know, 2 games, 2 days. We're going to see some development side play. So yeah. Dale's in the chat. Thank you, Dale, for tuning in with the wave. Chip of the old block. Good evening, DB. Hope you're okay yesterday. First half okay, second half mediocre. Chip of the block. Cheers for tuning in. Yeah, I agree. Listen, like I said, first half absolutely great, but obviously mentality of second half was a bit downhill. You know, it wasn't the same, but we did look good at times when we made some subs. But you got to remember, it's a work in progress, and that's what we see it as, a work in progress. Let's try not kill the players off this season. I know, look, if someone's shit, someone's shit. I agree with that, but right now I haven't seen a bad performance from a player. I would sit and say that. So yeah, Koenig came off after 2 minutes. Yeah, Mick, I know, man. It's not good. It's not a good look. I personally would have rested him yesterday till he was 100% ready. I don't know what's wrong with him. You know, he has been down for the last couple of pre-season games. Obviously this season. Don't know what's up with him. Hopefully he's okay though. Shout outs to him, and hopefully all the best and a speedy recovery. And we get to see him hopefully next week or even rested. So yeah, as long as he makes an appearance, obviously when the season starts, I'm happy. Hopefully we get some news this week. If we do, we will be posting for that as well. So yeah, Bajuri, honestly, Poku looks exciting. He does. Poku's game yesterday when he came on, really good. think we're going to see some good stuff if he can stay fit, just like Tariq Lamptey as well, and some other players. So yeah, big shout outs to them. But good for actually acknowledging that he actually did a good job yesterday. So yeah, what do you think our ideal formation is? That is a great question to talk about. So obviously, first half I believe it was 4-3-3. I think he's trying something different this season. I think he's just looking at ideas, working on certain certain areas to see whose strength is. You know, he's experimented with Vale and Ilias Shet in the middle. He has quite a bit in pre-season. So personally for me, I feel like Ilias, Harvey and Madsen look really good in that midfield. I honestly believe Isak looks really good in that midfield as well at times. You know, I feel like 3 in the midfield looks very strong now, very strong. But depending on injury-wise, you got to remember when we had our injuries yesterday, last season, it can play effect to what formation suits the best for the players that we have available. So 4-4-2 was something that was probably more comfortable for the players last season than what the head coach thought. But to see the 3 midfield yesterday, I think it was 4-3-3. That's what I'm going with. But it could have changed, because it did change in attack-wise. And in the second half, it did look like we were playing more of like a 5 in midfield as well in the second half. So yeah, but very, very good. I enjoyed seeing all of that. But to your answer, without going on, 4-3-3 seems to be the best ideal formation for next season, for this season, I would say. That's what I'm looking forward to. If we bring in more midfielders than we can, then a 4-3-3 is the way we're going to go. Because I think Burrell played, I said it last season and I wanted to see it last season as well. I wanted to see Burrell more on the right wing than Kone and stuff like that. So Burrell looked really good at times on the right wing. So 4-3-3 for me. I'm enjoying it so much. So yeah, that's the way. But if we have to change to the adapt to the environment of the team, 4-4-2, you know, at times 4-1-4-1, 4-4-1-1, whatever it is, but 2 up front is not a thing for that I'm enjoying for QPR last season. So yeah. Nick says Kone needs to work on his fitness. I don't know what's going on with Kone's fitness. You know, look, I can't sit and blame Kone all the time, because, you know, it's the fitness team that have to help him. You know, the fitness team are giving him the regimes, the plan and everything like that to get into fitness. You know, I wouldn't say Kone's unfit, but it's a bit weird that he has gone down constantly for the last couple of preseason games. I don't know what's up with him. Hopefully he's the best, like I said. But the fitness team, like I said, I think we've all pissed off and fed up of it. You know, that's the only problem I will say, and I will get pissed off with and talk about, is the fitness team. You know, whatever they're doing, it's not working, and yeah, it's not the best thing. So yeah. Tigana says, what's going on with Collie? I don't know. I personally don't know. No information has gone there. You know, he's been on social media in the sense of where people are posting. You know, there's a thing that he does with there's a fan, a young fan that he supports, I would say. You know, so I don't know what's going on. Hopefully it's just an injury. Not saying hopefully in the sense of I'm hoping he's injured, but it's just, I'm just saying I'm hoping he's not gonna leave, if that makes sense. So yeah, but once we get more information, then yeah. But if Collie does leave, it's probably gonna be on loan. I don't want him permanently gone, because I think he's a big asset to us. But yeah, not Seed. Well, thank you, Mick, for letting me know. I nearly fell for that. I just see that now. Seed, you're a funny guy. You're a very funny guy. You know what? You're very funny. I don't like seeing Burrell on the right. He's a goal scorer. We need him up front of goal. I think the thing was, he was just trying something, you know. The reason why I would sit here and always put Burrell thinking right wing is just because pretty much basically where I feel like he performs with pace. And when he's on that right, his pace is very valuable and then a big asset to QPR. Look, I think he's a great striker. He scores goals. You know, he did that for us last season. But you got to remember, if we play Burrell, I don't think Kone plays. If we play Kone, Burrell don't play, kind of thing. So personally, he's got to adjust to that. He's got to see where it goes, and we'll see. Obviously against Millwall, you know, there's going to be changes, there's going to be differences, and people will obviously understand that in the next couple of weeks. You know, I'm looking forward to Millwall game personally because it's a serious game that it should be taken serious. You know, we haven't seen Tylon Smith in the bench, so that's another thing as well. So yeah. Chip off the block trying to fool us again with that. Tigana's message retracted. Cool. No worries. Right. So, apart from that, let's talk some real business, right? Where should we start? So, Kone, obviously, we've spoke about Kone and Madsen. You know, we don't really need to get into that so much. You know, hopefully we get some news on them as soon as possible. But let's go on to transfers. So, let's start off with... Let's go with, obviously, the big rumours of two players. Oh wait, let me just read this quickly. We got so yeah. Tigana says, I think Burrell can be a golden boot. 100%. Look, I said this last season, right? I said if he stayed fit and he was playing for us last season, he would have won that golden boot last season, I reckon. And I reckon we would have been pushing for playoffs. So yeah, that's what I think. Wham says, missed you, DB. Looking forward to the season starting. No worries, Wham. Thank you for tuning in. Legend. Big ups to Wham and all you guys. Look, right. Let's just get straight into this because we've got some big news at the moment. So, you know, two big midfielders obviously have been linked to QPR. They have. So the first one is Glenn Kamara. So Glenn Kamara, obviously young Arsenal talent who was released, has been to different teams, obviously played for Leeds and played for Rangers, and obviously is at Rennes at the moment. Now, do I think it's going to be a permanent signing? It looks like we are going to sign him. It looks like possibly that he was the player that was with our liaison at the game against Wickham. People are saying obviously they saw him yesterday at the ground, whether that is because he just wants to see what it's like or we're trying to just agree to terms with Rennes, so he's here ready. But whether it's a loan or a transfer, it's possibly going to be, I'm going to say a loan, but it could possibly be a transfer as well. But I'm going to say loan just because if we are interested in another guy as well, then I don't see us bringing in both of them unless we're going to get rid of someone else in midfield as well. But Glenn Kamara, a bit about him. Obviously played for Arsenal as a young age. I can say, obviously, Leeds-wise, he helped Leeds get promoted to the Premier League. He did. He's a very big player, very, very huge player in midfield. He likes to control the game. If I had to tell you a bit of resemblance about him, he's a lot like Samba Diakite. If anyone remembers Samba Diakite back in the day when we brought him in from, I can't remember where it was, but we brought him in when Mark Hughes was in charge. Samba Diakite seems to be a very good talent. He was, but Glenn Kamara, like I was saying, he seems to be that type of player. He's more of a deep line playmaker where he likes to push more from halfway to pretty much into the box to score goals. He's very good at passing, very good at controlling the ball, very good at demanding. He's like an Eze player. When Eze holds the ball up, he knows, like, he doesn't chase, but he controls the game where he knows where players are and he tries to get free kicks and stuff like that. So he's very good at that. He's very good at as I call the third eye. You know, he's very good at sensing opponents around him and picking out what he needs to do as quick as possible. He's very commanding area. So yeah, I think Glenn Kamara could be a good signing. I think Glenn Kamara is a very good would be a good signing for us. You know, I know he's 30 years old, but personally, I think, you know, we need, like you said, experience-wise, not as in the Championship, but as in someone in the area of midfield with experience. You know, we've lost Samfield, we got Madsen, we got Varane, but we need cover. You know, injuries was a big problem with us last season. You know, Kieran Morgan has that experience, but he still needs more experience as a young agent to learn and understand where he's going. You know, so Glenn Kamara will be a good signing. Obviously, Leeds, he got helped out, and then he went to Rangers. Rangers, absolutely phenomenal player at Rangers, helped them to win the league title. I believe it was with Steven Gerrard, if I'm not mistaken, and did a phenomenal job there. Obviously, he's gone to Rennes. I'm not sure if he's doing a great job at Rennes, but yeah, it looks like he's going to be with us for next season, or this season, I should say. I'm looking forward to the signing. I think he's going to be a big asset when it comes down to the parts of super subs or someone that we need to be getting that extra attacking mentality into the box against big clubs, because he brings that threat and that side of things. So yeah, like I said, I don't know what's going on with wage, like obviously transfer wise on the loan or transfer market, but he's gonna be a QPR player, I reckon. He will be, because there's been a lot of talk of it on Twitter, and obviously there's people saying that he's been at QPR for the last 48, 72 hours, whatever it is. So yeah, don't know when they're gonna announce it, but it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with that one. What people are saying on it. If we sign another midfielder, do you think it would be back players like Morgan and Isak? I wouldn't say it would hold them back, but I would say it would mean that they might need to go out on loan to get some game time, if that is the case. But honestly, I will say this right now, and I'm a big fan of both of them, Kieran Morgan, Isak Alexander. But I think Isak goes over Morgan all day long. I think there's something about Isak that I feel like he has so much more confidence than Kieran Morgan when he took control of the game with how Julian wants to play. Kieran Morgan is a brilliant strike, got brilliant strike and all that, but he just needs that experience. He's coming to QPR, he's had a great first season QPR and Marty, but this whole new system that Julian has put him in, I would say he needs a bit more experience for it. So yeah, I would say a loan move for both of them would be great, but depending on what happens, obviously going ahead with that. But yeah, two great players, I think. So yeah, Bajuri says, oh, not Diakite, he's walking red card. Diakite, I thought he was a good player. I wouldn't say he had a mentality kind of like Amadou Mbenge, but he was a very talented player. He had good dribbling and good ways to control the game. So yeah, Mick says Glenn Kamara played 5 times last season. Thank you for letting me know, because I didn't know. I know he played for Rennes, but I think you gotta remember, Rennes is a big club in France in the sense of young talent. So when they bring that young talent up, Glenn Kamara is not going to be important for that, and that's probably what they did. They just wanted him for backup, and obviously Glenn Kamara probably wants first team, and he probably wants to think about where his next move is, and that's probably why it's taken a long time to get his name through the door. Probably wants to make sure that he's going to get first team football at QPR. Probably, I'm not sure, but yeah, I think he was fit for most games. He just wasn't good enough to play, pretty much. Yeah. Mick says it will 100% be a loan. If it is 100% a loan, then I could see the other guy, what we're going to talk about in a minute, coming in on a actual price. So yeah, can't wait for the first game stream, DB. No worries, man. Look, we'll be live, like I said, we'll be live on Friday and Saturday next week. We will be for sure. 2 games. Obviously, one's going to be probably development side. One's probably going to be normal first team. Don't know what game they're going to do, but we'll see what happens. We get to see a bit of both. But 2 live streams on two different days. Absolutely. But actually, no, we're going to be live on for 3 days. So we'll be live for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday next week. So happy days, man. Big up those 3 days for you guys and me. So yeah. Tigana says Isak actually wants the ball and he's very exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's why I call it the third eye, where someone like Eze, for example, when he gets that ball, he's so understanding of the environment around him and what's around him, not just by looking up, but just by understanding where players are. So yeah, I would say to me, Isak is that guy as well. So yeah. Wab says, have you predicted where we will end up this season? Do you think playoffs are realistic? Listen, look, playoffs are going to be realistic for sure. But at the end of the day, because it's top 8, that's the only reason why I'm saying it. But top 10 is somewhere where we need to be next season. It's not guaranteed 15th, not guaranteed 12th. It needs to be top 10 next season for sure. There's no doubt about it. If we don't get top 10 next season, then a lot of work needs to go into this team to see what happens. As long as we finish top 10 next season, even if we don't go up, I'm happy. I'm happy for that, because it's not just a big improvement, but it's also a realistic kind of looking way of where we're going. You know, we got some big games this season, sorry. I keep saying next season for some reason when we're already in this season. But we've got big games, and that is the big thing about it. You know, we got West Ham, we got Wolves, we got Burnley. You know, we got these teams. Burnley I'm not really worried about, but I am more worried about West Ham, Wolves, Southamptons, the Middlesbroughs. You know, teams like this. They're the games that I'm worried about, because they're going to be the threat. I'm more worried as well about Norwich. Norwich look what they're bringing in as well. Absolutely buzzing on that as well. So it's going to be some big games and big challenges, and we've got to treat Loftus Road as a winning streak. You know, we can't lose at Loftus Road like we have in the past couple of seasons. You know, I don't want Norwich coming to QPR and beating us 4-1, or Borough beating us 4-1, or whatever it is. So yeah. Barry says, who is number one keeper this year? Ooh, that's a good shout. You know what? I'm going to go with right now Charles, because I feel like when I watched Ward yesterday, he still needs to get used to everything, but they're two similar players. But I think Charles, with his experience already in the Championship, he beats him. But we know what Julian's like. He's going to change the keepers once in a while. I think against Millwall, we will see Ward. And against Portsmouth away in the first game, we see Charles. I reckon. That's my prediction. So we'll find out whoever gets the number one shirt is going to be the number one. And I honestly think it's possibly going to be... You know what? Ward might get number one, because obviously he is signed. And Charles will get obviously the loan. Obviously being loaned, he might just get a number 13 like Joe Walsh or whatever. So yeah. But that's that. So apart from that, Glenn Kamara... And obviously there's another guy coming, obviously rumours of Blackburn and us and some other European teams after him. So obviously Oxford United last season had a bit of a difficult season, in the sense of where tipsy-topsy. They obviously started off the season with Gary Rowett, a very good head coach, I've always said, for the Championship. But then obviously ended in Bloomfield. Now, obviously, Bloomfield's job was to keep Oxford up into the Championship last season, but unfortunately couldn't. They got relegated into League One. And obviously, you know, some teams will be very good in seeing what happens with signings. Now, it looks like Oxford actually have got a different manager in Aaron Ramsey now. I don't know what happened to Bloomfield. I'm not sure what happened, and I never just realised that now. So, 4 days ago, obviously, a very good source in Sports Pete, or Pete Rook, as everyone knows him, reported that QPR and Blackburn and many other European clubs are after the signing of Oxford United midfielder Brian de Keersmaker. Now, Keersmaker is 25, 26 years old. He's a very talented midfielder, very talented central midfielder, I should say. You know, he did get relegated with Oxford, but he did perform really well last season in the Championship, I thought. You know, I wouldn't sit here and say he was the best at certain things, but he was very impressive in the games, obviously, that I watched him in, very much against QPR as well. You know, I still need to understand what his game type is, but it would be a very good signing for QPR to bring him in. You know, for someone to work with Madsen, he might be a good shout. You know, I wouldn't say he's comparing to Jordan James or Dan Neil or anyone like that, but he's a very important asset where he has experience, he's at a good age, and he would work well in midfield for us in the style of play that Julian wants, you know. And I feel like this season we're not focusing on defensive players in midfield. We're looking more at box-to-box players in midfield, if that makes sense. You know, he's a very tall guy, very strong, and I feel like it'll be a good, sensible signing for QPR when we go ahead with that. Now, obviously, if we do get him, it's going to be a good price tag, because obviously he got relegated. I don't know what his wage structure is at pretty much Oxford United, but it possibly could be a good signing for us, you know, in midfield. I'm looking forward to it if we do sign him, but there's been nothing at the moment. I know he's been missing games for Oxford. He hasn't been seen. So whether that means he's going abroad or going to someone else, I'm not too sure. But we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. You know, we should probably be signing one or the other or both of them in the next couple of weeks before the season starts. So I generally think, you know, I will probably do this, right? I'd probably get some more information on him, and when we do get some more, I would sit here and say probably put a video out of him or something like that. So yeah, just turned on the show, apologies it's been mentioned, but Kamara has a good pedigree, being signed for 5 million and 8 million. Yeah, I agree. Kamara, listen, look, Kamara is a very good player in the sense of experience, and obviously with what he's done with Leeds and Rangers and all of that. For me, I'm not very confident with the signing, but just because of Kamara is 30 years old, you know, but that's because how I am as a person, you know. The age group that we have, I think 26, 27, 28 at a push is decent, but when we start signing 30-year-olds, and if we're giving them big wages or signing them for big money, it's kind of stupid. So for me, that's the only reason why I was not big up on the signing, but I need to see him play for QPR first. That's what I'm saying. If we do sign him, or when we sign him, I need to see what he does at QPR, and if we do sign the other guy as well in Kurzmacher, we'll see what happens there, because Kurzmacher is going to cost a bit of money, I think. I'm not saying it's going to be like 5-6 million, but it should be at least 1 to 2 million, maybe 2, 5, 3 at a push. So yeah, but that's that. That's people that we're interested in. No rumours at the moment and anything about anything else rumours that are coming in. Obviously, winger wise is something that I was very interested in bringing in, but obviously no news on that. But what I would say is this, the big thing right now is Ronnie Edwards. So let me just read this at the moment. Charles is very confident he was on the edge of the 18-yard box playing like a sweeper. Exactly, Tigana. That's why I feel like what I kind of didn't understand about Julian last season, and I do apologise on that, because he's proved me wrong, Julian's proved me wrong for once, you know, about goalkeepers. Probably Joe Walsh wasn't great and Nardi wasn't great and all of that, because what we saw with Charles yesterday was pretty good. So that's what I'm saying in playing style. But yeah, going on for Ronnie Edwards. So it's been confident news that obviously Burnley are chasing or are in rumoured interest in Ronnie Edwards. Now, I would sit here and say comfortably, I've said it already, I don't think he'll leave. I don't think he's going, you know. The only worrying thing about it is when these rumours do come out, it means that an agent has spoken to the player, or the club has spoken to the player's agent or something like that, you know. And I wouldn't sit here and say there's confidence in saying that he's very interested in moving, because he's very comfortable and confident in where he's at right now. Now, if it comes to the point where his career that he's interested in wanting to be in the Premier League, then Burnley may be a good shout. But at the end of the day, I think if he stays, we have a good shout in getting promoted, because he is a big valuable asset with Jimmy Dunn in the middle for us. You know, he's a very important player for us this season and last season. We finally signed him. And the thing is, if we do sell him, it's got to be for a good price, man. I don't want to see him gone for 10 million. If we sell him, 10 million is pointless. You know, I want to see at least a 15 to 20 mil buy-in, you know, and a sell-on clause as well, you know, something like that. But I honestly think there's going to be no way he's leaving. And if I'm wrong, I'll be very surprised. You know, I don't think he'll leave. I think he's confident enough to sit here and say, you know what, I love this club. This is my club and I want to stay here and see what happens, you know. So I think Ronnie Edwards says, you know, we've bragged about him so many seasons to bring him in. Someone that I'm a big fan of. And yeah, I just think 100% he will definitely stay at QPR for sure. So yeah, but I wouldn't worry about anything about Ronnie. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I feel confident in saying he stays at QPR for sure. So yeah. We have a joint youngest squad in the championship. We need experience. But depending on what you mean by experience, Mick, you know, obviously we can look at age-wise, or we can look at how many appearances in the leagues and stuff like that. You know, I know what Julian wants. Julian doesn't care about age. Julian wants understanding of a league. He wants the mentality of a player that has played in that league and understood it for a while. And that's what he said last season, and that's what he wanted. And I think that's why Charles has come in, because he has that experience in the championship. You know, Kemper was a free agent. Obviously, you know, It's a good signing, I think. Kemp has been brilliant for us, honestly, in pre-season. Who else? You know, Tariq Lamptey. You know, he hasn't been in the Championship, but he's a freaking great Premier League player he was. But unfortunately, injuries have been a big problem for him. Now, will I say, is he going to be superb for us next season? I'm not sure, because he can get injured and ACLs are a big thing. So, Dembele as well is another statement. You know, it's one of them things. But fitness in this team is important for next season for sure. We need to work on our fitness and we need to look at our team and what's going on there. So yeah, before the season though, we'll probably get a Julian, Christian Nuri, you know what they do with fan forums, and do you know what? I'll sit here and say this: if you want us to do a watch along for the fan forum when it does go live, let me know, because I don't mind doing it. If we're gonna do a fan forum watch along, let us know in the comments below after the live stream. So yeah, we should try to get Tim back on loan from Everton. It's not going to happen to Ghana, unfortunately, you know. His wage is too high, and apparently he looks like he could be going to a different team in the Premier League right now. So, yeah, new signings will be great, but we had plenty of players injured last season, gives us an extra 4 to 5 players. I feel like we look at it this way, right? At the end of the season, how many youngsters was on that pitch in defence? You know, we had Tylon Smith, we had Isaac on that bench. We had a couple of others as well in Esquadina. You know, these are players that are not ready for first team yet, I think, and they need experience and loan moves or a glimpse of, like I said last season, for me, if we're going to play youngsters, it needs to be in the right game. So, I mean, teams like Lincoln City and all of this, that's where we should be playing youngsters, just to see how they are. Give them 45 minutes, give them 30 minutes, give them 25 minutes, wherever it is, against Lincoln City, all these types of, you know, teams. That's the teams that you kind of want to give the youngsters to give them a run out. You know, you don't play Esquadina against freaking Burnley or West Ham or whatever, even though, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with Esquadina. You know, I think he's got a bit of talent on him, but, you know, he hasn't shown it at the moment. But that's where my mind is at the moment, you know. If we're going to play youngsters, I think playing youngsters in important games that they can play in would be very more sensible and reasonable for Julian. So, yeah. But I back Julian and I definitely back Kevin Betsy. So, yeah. If fit this season, Lay says. I'm not too sure what that means, but yeah, we need to make sure certain players are fit for sure. I guarantee that. So yeah, you make a lot of sense, DB Wham says. Listen, look, I'm just throwing my thoughts and what I know about football, in my opinion. You know, look, I'm not gonna say this in any other way. You know, I'm not sitting here and saying that I've played professional football, but I've had an experience in amateur level and stuff like that. So to sit here and talk to you guys and try to see both opinions, not just mine, but yours as well, you know, because I am sometimes wrong. And that's the truth. So, you know, for me, as a person that has experienced football as well, an amateur level, I know how a club is run. I know the difficulties of a player. I know injuries. I know all of this. And you've always, as a fan, it's kind of annoying, but you've got to kind of look at two sides to every story. And that's where, obviously, the sense part comes into it, you know. And that's why I say I back Julian so much, because, you know, stability is a big thing in the club. You can't just keep changing managers every season just because of where we finished in the league or something like that. At the end of the day, the ownership need to make them choices on who they bring in, and they need to make sure that they're the right people. You know, Christian Nuri was a good shout to bring in, and since he's come in, the whole game plan has been marvelous for us. You know, we may not have been very successful with Marty, but I'm damn fucking confident that Julian will be a big asset for us in the future. You know, people might not believe that yet, but I will stick by him until I actually see something that I don't like. You know, the signings have been superb since Christian Nuri has come in. You know, not just experience, but we've been spending good signings on Championship players and Premier League players and building a squad ready for the Premier League. And that is the whole point. You know, you don't want to go into this Premier League buying players that are 100 mil plus or whatever, you know, because at the end of the day, we're going to have to spend money, but we're also going to be smart enough to say here, look, we got to look at the free market like we do each season. We got to look at certain low moves or even a certain player that's cheap. So yeah, it's pretty much like Moneyball. If anyone knows what Moneyball is, if you've ever watched Moneyball, go watch it. It's a very good sports film, very great. It's Brad Pitt basically being a coach of a baseball team, and the way they basically made a great baseball team is they looked at statistics and stuff like that and gone from there. So it's a very good movie. You should have a look at it. Honestly, big shout outs to that. So if you've watched it already, go for it. But yeah, Lee says if Harvey Vale stays fit this season, I think he'll be one of the top players in the championship this season, either out wide or central. He's so talented, Lee says. But, mate, I've been saying it for 4 seasons. Look, I watched him when he was at Port Vale. I've been watching him as a Chelsea youngster. I'm sorry, Uncle Russell, but it's the truth. Honestly, I apologise. I have watched Chelsea. You know, I'm not saying I support Chelsea whatsoever, but I'm a very big football fan, you know, and, you know, for me, watching young talent football players play, it's amazing because there's so much talent at QPR as well. And yeah, going from there, I would sit here and say Harvey Vale was one of them guys that I wanted to see succeed at Chelsea, but he was just held back with injuries. And this is the thing, what I will say. With each club have a different regime and fitness and what they want in a player. Harvey Vale was probably getting injured because he couldn't handle, not probably couldn't handle, but just the training regimes and stuff like that of the player was maybe too intense. The way we do things probably suits his style, and he has stayed fit for QPR, and it's very good to see that. You know, I'm not sitting and saying that he wasn't great in the Premiership or anything like that, but he's a player that I can see being incredible in the Premier League for us when we do get promoted. You know, he's going to be a big asset and very important. So yeah, that's how I see it. So my opinion is this, you know, Harvey Vale next season. Do you know what? I will put a video out here, but I might even sit here and say Madsen or Harvey Vale gets player of the season for the championship next season. I will say that. I think those 2 players might even get shouted for player of the season in the championship next season. It would be great to see that. You know, that's what I want to see. I want to see some QPR championship players win some awards next season. So yeah. I think this transfer window has been good. Upgrades have definitely been made. Wham says 100%. Look, you know, we're working. Look, you can't do a Tottenham. You can't do this, you know, sometimes. You can't just keep buying players to upgrade everything so on and constantly, you know. In this game, it takes time to build. You know, you can only spend a certain amount of money, and you need to do it correctly and in the right way. You know, like I said to you guys last season, fullbacks need a big thing for us next season. It needs a revamp, and it has been done. You know, we've got a better left back in my opinion, experienced left back at a good age and on a free. And I also think the right back scenario has been resolved with Tariq Lamptey. But not just that, I think ever since the comedy gold of Julian Stefan in the lift saying to Amadou Mbengue, I think you need to come to this crossing meeting. Since that, I've just seen Amadou Mbengue bringing some brilliant crosses in the box, and I think all of you have seen that. Amadou Mbengue's been fucking impressive this season, and you know what? He's proven, and this is why I really like him, because last season I was at him so bad about his attacking ability down the wing. This season, pre-season has been brilliant for him, and I'm glad he's proven me wrong, because this is what I want, honestly, in QPR players. I want to be proven wrong, you know? I don't want to see players fail. And Amadou Mbengue has proven me wrong yet again. And this is why I like him. He's going to be an outstanding player. You know, he has the same... I have the same feeling of Danny Shutu with him, honestly. You know, he reminds me of his mentality as Danny Shutu. You know, and I genuinely think Amadou Mbengue is going to be very, very good this season for QPR. And I'm looking forward to it, honestly. He's been very impressive with his crosses and his attacking ability. And I can't wait. And hopefully you guys have seen that too. So, yeah. Chip off the block says Brentford copied the money bags concept and look where that showed are now. Brentford have done brilliant. You know, and I'll sit here and say brilliant. Brentford last season, I said that they would get relegated because they lost Frank, and that was proven wrong on that. So Keith Andrews, shout outs to Keith Andrews, he done an incredible job to come in and do what he did. So yeah, Moneyball, yeah, that I'm guessing you're just correcting what you said, Moneybag. So yeah, but listen, look, it's been a great stream. This has been a great stream again. Yesterday was a great stream. We hit 1.8k views. Absolutely buzzing. You guys killed it yet again. Every stream you do it, every watch along, you know, it just, you guys are phenomenal, honestly, man. I don't know how much I can say as much more as I do, but you guys are so important to this channel. So yeah, but we're gonna leave it there for today. We're gonna leave it there for tonight. We've gone on for almost an hour. Absolutely another great stream, another great Sunday at 7 p.m. and well, it's 8, it's almost 8 now, but we're gonna leave it there for today. We'll be live on Friday and Saturday. If there's any big updates this week, we will be posting, so don't forget that. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe if you can, it does help. Hit the like button, subscribe if you want to. Shout outs to Chip Off the Block, Wham, Lee, Mick, Tigana, who else, Barry, Wham again, Mick again, Bajuri, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Seed, as always, thank you. Chip Off the Block, I think I said that already. And Dale at the start as well. But you guys, man, have a good evening, man. Honestly, have a lovely evening. Enjoy your Sunday. And we will catch you Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for 3 great live streams, hopefully. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to. Peace, love, positivity. As always, we'll catch you in a bit. Shout out to you guys. Cheers, boys. Have a good evening. Peace out.